Hi, this is Trevor Conquergood, the software manager for RNK Distributing, and welcome to this week's RNK Software Club's video of the week. The topic for this week is about the Floriani software collection, because as you probably know, there is more than one software that can be activated when you own the Floriani software. And so what I've got on my screen right now is actually the program called Creative Express. And here in the middle, you can see the covers for all of the different programs that could be activated. And so I thought I would introduce them all to you today and then just talk a little bit about the real beauty of the Floriani WAF format, because I think sometimes people really miss the real sort of importance of having that WAF file and what it can do for you. And so first of all, we'll talk about the different programs. And so Floriani Creative Express is actually a program that you can download and install for free. And this is what it looks like. You'll notice as a Floriani user, a lot of your favorite things that you use every day, things like your browser, that you could browse to a folder on your computer, find a design, click and drag, bring it onto your workspace. And so that's a great reason to have the Floriani software. If you don't own any software at all and you're somebody who's like a brand new embroiderer, this is a really great find. It doesn't allow you to create embroidery, like our FTCU does, but it will open and save the different formats. And it has the thread converter down at the bottom, so you can easily use our one-click thread converter to change the, thread brand from, whatever thread brand opens up to Floriani or any other brand that you choose. Yeah, so the idea here is you've got your slow redraw tool and some sort of basic things like hoops and whatnot. So as a Floriani user of FTCU or any Floriani program, you already own all of these features. You have them as part of your software. But just know that this could be a companion software to your software. In other words, do you have a friend that has an embroidery machine that doesn't have the Floriani software? Now you can tell them to go ahead and get Creative Express. And that way, one simple thing will be really great for you is they'll be able to open the Floriani WAF file and save it in any format that they need. So if you don't have the same embroidery machine as your friends, this becomes a great go-between. And one of my very favorite things about Creative Express is the fact that I can put my design notes in here and you can leave notes for your friends. This is the design that changed my life. Tell them what you want, tell them what they need. You can even add notes to their sewing sequence. So if you want them to know that after this color, you can select that color, right click, and say add a note after. And say after this color, do this. I'm not a good typer, so I'll just do that. But the idea is it's going to insert that, and now if they get their design and you've sent it to them as a WAF and they do a little printed, run sheet, it will tell them, if I get through to the page where it's got the information will be displayed, including your notes and any other design notes that you put on there. And so we think that the WAF file is like the best file in the world. Anyway, so what do you own? Probably most of the people that say, I have Floriani software, what they really mean is, I own FTCU. That's the Cadillac, right? That's our top of the line embroidery software. We do have another embroidery software. It's called Floriani Fusion. And Fusion is something that is often used in a machine bundle. And maybe you receive Fusion in a machine bundle, and that's awesome. You have all the core tools and the most important tools for creating embroidery designs. What I'll say is if you own FTCU, not only do you own everything there is in Creative Express, of course you do, you already own everything there is in Fusion. And if you own Fusion, then you probably own about half of the features of FTCU. So you can think of it that way. Of course, there's a way to find out which ones do and don't, what they do. Probably the easiest way to do that is to use demo mode. It doesn't matter what one of these programs you have activated, you can go to your Help drop-down menu and choose Demo Mode. And when you go into Demo Mode, you can check off what ones you want to see. If you want to see it, what it would be like to own them all, well then leave everything checked off. If you want to see what would it be like if I purchased Floriani Sketch-A-Stitch, then uncheck everything but Sketch-A-Stitch. If you're thinking about buying FTCU, then you go and you just check off the first two. Does that make sense? So you can try any of these programs before you buy them. And that's also really helpful for teachers to be able to go in and isolate the different programs. And you can even have a room full of students that have activated Creative Express on their computer, and they can all go into demo mode and have a small class on how to use, for example, FTCU would be the equivalent of the Fusion plus the Fusion upgrade. I guess I really need to make that say equals FTCU, the first two checks. But so anyway, FTCU is obviously our embroidery software, but we do have some other softwares. We have our cool creative Sketch-A-Stitch software. We've got the Lettering Master software, Total Quilter software, and Rainbow software. And these are all things that, of course, I'm not going to try and demo all of these different softwares right now, but there are great videos in the club. Anybody who's wanting to know more about what's Rainbow, just go to the RNK Software Club, look in the training video section for, videos that are sorted by all of these different softwares. But basically, whatever you do purchase, and you can just, any Floriani dealer can sell the activation codes to these programs. And so you go Help, and then you can go to your license activator. And whatever you purchase, you can activate. So I think you guys already know all of that good stuff, but you may not know about Creative Express and that you can refer your friends to get it. So they'll be able to communicate with you in a different way, and it does allow you to share your designs just simply in the WAF format. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and activate all of my Floriani software so that I can come back on with my full suite and show you guys just a little bit more about some of the things that I think are really cool and important about the WAF format, and even an answer to a question that came up this week in our support stuff. And so just hold on a second and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back, and I've activated all of my Floriani software, and I just wanted to keep talking a little bit more about why I think it's so important that we all understand the benefit of saving your designs and keeping them in the WAF format. You see, let's just go ahead and create a few things here so we can see what happens. I'll make myself a rectangle, and I'll select that rectangle and fill it in with some kind of a fancy motif pattern like this. And as you know, the benefit of having what I like to call sort of artwork based or shape based embroidery is we have the shape of a rectangle, and currently it's set to be filled with a motif stitch. And you know that you can easily change that motif to be, any number of different kind of cool decorative stitches, as well as you can even mix them together and have kind of like your own cool, unique pattern of stitching like this. And yet, if you save the design, you could come back and change your mind and try different patterns later. Another simple example of the benefit of the WAF is when you make an embroidery of a filled-in shape like this bear, and you just use a standard embroidery fill, and how you would have the ability to go into shape mode and do things like change the direction of the stitches, or change the entry where it should start sewing and where it should finish sewing options. And it's even the same with your rectangle with the cool decorative motif on it. I can use the shape tool to come in and set the direction of the pattern, as well as where it should start the embroidery. So put your green bead where you want to start and your red bead where you want it to finish. And the software will rearrange everything to match what you've asked for. And so if you watch this sew out, you'll notice that the first stitch will start right where I said it would start. It's going to sew through the pattern and sort of sew each thing kind of one time. Maybe I'll just drag it over myself. And so it's all very logical, and then it does the bear, started where I told it to, and finishes where I told it. And with the bear, you might come back later and decide you need to change the pattern of the fill or the type of underlay. Maybe you want to add a contour or put a full lattice on it, and click apply, and now the software can quickly update it. And so really that's when you save your designs, you need to save them as a WAF file so that you have all of those things, including your design notes. This is the notes. And so if I say save right now, and I go on my desktop and call this design 1 WAF, then at any time I'll be able to close that design, click on open, browse on my desktop, find the same design, and have all of those same capabilities that we had before. I can still select the bear, and I can still change his directions. Now, the reason I bring this up is because a lot of times what happens, and this is a very common thing that happens to people, is they say file, and they save their design to embroider it into a machine language like PES or JEF or DST or EXP or any number of these different formats. And so I'll save it as a JEF file. Now, I'm going to close it. So technically on my workspace right now, and it asks me, do I want to save it? Well, sure, I'll say yes, because remember, I changed the stitch direction, so that's really what I'm saving. So now, if I say open, I'll have the option. There's design 1 JEF and design 1 WAF. Well, JEF is the design that you would take to your machine to stitch it out. And then because very unlikely that your embroidery machine can read a WAF file. I know they don't. But the JEF file is the stitches, and it's only the stitches. And when you open it up, it comes in as stitches. There won't be any design notes. Excuse me. There won't be any artwork. It just says stitches. And a lot of times when people open up their designs like this, they'll use a special option. When you open it up, you can choose, and so there's the JEF again, convert to outlines. And so when we use convert to outlines, the software reads those stitches and it makes shapes. But it will make different shapes than the original shapes. Now, when you look at the blue color, it became 1, 2, 3 different run stitches. So it read, and it tries to see a pattern, and if it sees a change in the pattern, it will stop. And I'm not sure why, because normally it probably comes out all in one run stitch there. So one way or another, they all link together, and the benefit of that is, yes, you could make this larger, and it would generate new stitches based upon the stitch length of the original design. So there's the benefit of it. Same thing with the bear. We can select the bear and make them bigger or smaller, and the software will generate new stitches. The stitch count will change based upon the original pieces. Now, the bear, if you look at the bear, is no longer going to be one single piece of artwork for the bear. There will be several pieces of artwork that come up. And so this is what happens. As the software reads those stitches, it sees a shape. It says that's a fill. But then it sees some more stitching that looks like a run stitch, so if it doesn't know, it'll call it stitches. But it breaks up every time your design, if you watch it stitch out, every time that bear changed sort of stitching direction, the software started a new segment because it saw a new pattern. And so there's fill patterns, and there's some that are the fills, and there's some that are the satins. And either way, you can resize it, and it will generate new stitches. Now notice when I resized it, I can sense this right away. There's a bit of a gap here now. What's happened? Well, because there's this fill segment that goes here. Now it's all grouped together. So let's try and get just that piece. Oh, maybe that was the run stitch underlay. Let's see. Yeah, it's all grouped together. So we're going to click on ungroup, and then we're going to try and see if we can click on. So that's underlay. Click off. Click right there. So see the piece that's right here? and how those pieces at the original size did not have a gap in between, but when we resized it and made it larger, there was 2 shapes, and those shapes were separated by about 1 density amount. And so this kind of happens to people when they resize their designs that they purchased. So this is a total tangent right now, but the idea is I can go into shape mode and move the edge of that shape. Whoops, I didn't want it to go up that high. To match up with, and you may have to get zoomed in really close. You may even have to move that little red X or red N bead for a moment. And that way you can bring your shape that you've got and move it up, and now you don't have that gap. So that was a tip that's, more about when you're editing your stitch files, because really the point I'm trying to make here is you should save it as a WAF, because if you open the original design 1 WAF, the bear's still all one shape. That would never happen, right? That couldn't happen because it's all one bear. Not only that, it would be very easy to later on come in and say, why did you choose that stitch direction when you could have chosen that one? And you can quickly change it and sew it again. So this is the benefit of making edits. So I just want you to understand that the benefit of the WAF file is that not only can you save notes, look here, it says this is the notes. Well, go in your design that you saved as a stitch format, and those notes would be lost because, understand that the basic embroidery format like Jeff or PES or, DST, those things are really based upon stitches, and they don't have artwork shapes. They don't have the ability to save notes. Really it's just color information, to stop the machine, and XY coordinates on where to move it. And so what I want you to all hear today is don't forget to save your WAF file, you guys. That's the most important thing. And because this is an interesting tip, and one last thing I'll share with you guys today. This came up this week. One of my, friends and experienced users got confused. This exact same thing happened. Part of their design had been opened up, even though it was originally, their design. They were opening up the PES as opposed to the WAF. And what happens is, they wanted to move the entry and exit points on their motif fill like this. And so you select it and you go into the shape mode and you see where it starts and where it stops. Well, because this is a run stitch, if I move that entry point to, let's say, somewhere else, over here now, when that segment starts sewing, notice that it starts right where I said. See that? It had to jump to get there because it was broken up into 3. When normally it would have probably come in as 1, but not sure what happened there. But the point is, this doesn't really work as well, because what happens is I move that entry point, but this is a run stitch, and so it's going to walk along till it gets to the end of the line, and then it's going to walk back all the way along and double up all. So what happens is half of the motif pattern ends up getting sewn twice and half doesn't. And that's because technically it's not a motif pattern, it's simply a run stitch. This is no different than if you have a single run stitch. So if I do, let's just digitize a run stitch that starts on the left and finishes on the right and let go. And you'll see that it jumps to the beginning and it stitches along, the path of that line from left to right. Well, I didn't do a very good job showing it here. Let me get to the beginning of it. So you can see it sews all in one path anyway. I'm going through it backwards. But if I use the shape tool and I move the entry point to, let's say, the middle of it, sure, it'll jump and start right there. But now what the software is going to have to do to be able to stitch that is when it reaches, here, let's just make this run stitch its own color so that I can reach it easily. When it gets to the end of that color, you'll see it started right where we said it should start, but it sews to the beginning of the line, and then it'll come back along that line, and I'm just clicking like one stitch at a time here, so it gets to the beginning, and then back along the end to travel to this side, and so it got some of it 2-ply and some of it single ply, and so that again is my point to the power of the WAF, because if you don't save your design as a WAF and you save it as a stitch format, and then you want to change the pattern, you want to make, you can't, it's very, at this point, if you wanted to remake any of this, it would probably be easier to get the rectangle tool and use your rectangle tool to draw a new piece of artwork and start filling that artwork in with motif stitches. That gives you back, the power that you had in the first place that you kind of lost. So if you purchase designs and you don't have the benefit of the WAF, then that does at least give you some editing capabilities with the ability to convert your stitches into shapes. And it's really an amazing thing. However, never forget that if you're designing it, to always save the WAF. So in my folders, you'll always find for every design a WAF. I don't always keep the stitch formats. That's entirely optional. If you want to have design 1 WAF and right beside it design 1 GEF or whatever format you want, that is entirely possible, but just know that you can always make that GEF and you don't have to save it. So usually my GEFs end up living on the USB stick that went to the machine, and my WAFs end up living in my computer. But you do it how you like. And I hope that wasn't too kind of a weird video for this week. We'll find something more project-oriented for next week. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening, and bye for now.